World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump threatened escalating tariffs on key European allies unless the US is allowed to buy Greenland. Duties would start at 10% on February 1 and rise to 25% by June. European leaders rejected the demand, warning it could damage NATO unity, derail trade deals, and deepen transatlantic tension. Syrian government forces advanced into Kurdish-held areas near the Euphrates, taking Tabqa and key dams despite US calls to stop. Kurdish-led SDF accused the army of violating a withdrawal deal and warned it would fight to hold remaining towns and oil fields. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accused President Trump of fueling deadly protests that killed over 3,000 people. Khamenei called Trump a criminal, while Iran blamed the unrest on US and Israeli interference amid mass arrests and internet shutdowns. European Union and Mercosur leaders have signed the landmark free trade agreement in Paraguay after 25 years of negotiations, paving the way for what would become the European Union's largest ever trade deal. The accord covers the European Union with Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, but still requires approval from the European Parliament. New York City Mayor Mamdani has appointed Tricia Shimamura as the city's new Parks Department commissioner, tasking her with managing more than 30,000 acres of land. Mamdani praised Shimamura's decade-long record of public service, while Shimamura called the role an honor and vowed to make a difference. According to IMF statements, the International Monetary Fund has approved a $261 million disbursement for Ethiopia after completing the fourth review of its 48-month extended credit facility, bringing total IMF support under the program to just over $2.18 billion. Syria's Communications Minister Abdul Salman Haikal said internet users can now access the Google Play Store without a VPN and that most Google services are expected to return to Syria soon. The restoration follows the removal of Syria from US Treasury's off-act sanctions list last year. According to a Department of Justice letter filed with Judge Paul Engelmeyer, the US Justice Department has urged a New York federal judge to reject lawmakers Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey's push for a special master to oversee the release of Jeffrey Epstein-related files. Viewers, let's now start with news from Greenland, where European leaders are voicing strong opposition to Trump's threat of tariffs on European allies over Greenland. This comes as Trump announced a 10% tariff on goods from Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Finland, and Great Britain, effective from February 1. The tariffs are set to rise by 25% by June unless a deal is reached for the US to acquire Greenland. The German finance minister stressed the need for a strong, united European response, making it clear that Europeans will not be blackmailed. In Ireland, Foreign Minister Helen McSetty called the tariff threat completely unacceptable, reiterating that the future of Greenland should be decided by Denmark and the Greenlandic people in line with international law. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez stated that a US invasion of Greenland would make Putin the happiest man on earth, arguing it could legitimize Russia's actions in Ukraine and destroy NATO. Trump has long insisted on full ownership of Greenland, citing its strategic importance and mineral resources. However, both Denmark and Greenland have made it clear that the island is not for sale and the people of Greenland do not want to join the US. Matti Zweig now joins us in the discussion here. He's a geopolitical expert from Tel Aviv. Matti, thank you very much. Well, a lot of concerns are being raised now on Trump's tariff threats effective from February 1, starting from 10%, going on to 25% by June. Where does this leave the transatlantic alliance? Where does it leave Denmark's sovereignty and the very will of the people of Greenland, who say they don't want to be Americans or Danes?
Well, of course, it's not a comfortable situation because they are supposed to be partners
in NATO and historically part of the West, etc., for not to treat each other in that way. The question is that, Trump way of doing things is maybe brutal, but it doesn't mean that it's useless or that he's not right. And I tell you why. Because all these years, there have been, Greenland has been approached by other foreign countries like Russia and China. They are trying to get this place when we are these days in a big geopolitical threat that has been being on the progress, not only in the last year or since Trump is in office, is going on in the last 20 years. The Russians, because of the climate change, has been drilling and doing new paths and new bases and everything in their Arctic. They are trying to get the passes through the north of Scandinavia and Norway also to Greenland, and this is a potential threat for the West. The United States has been telling this, the Europeans, they didn't react. Now, suddenly they are reacting. And how they are reacting? Sending in a funny way 3 people from UK, 2 from France, and 1 from Holland to say they are going to defend what? All this group together cannot defend even a sea lion. So from this point of view, Trump is right. The question is if he has to take this place by force, he should talk with the European partners, sitting together, how to share the responsibilities there, how to put more big and efficient ways of surveillance of foreign submarines and vessels that they are going around from places like countries like China and Russia, and to defend better the North Atlantic Sea. But he's not doing this in this way. He's really very confrontative. And I think it's also a strategy to make some concessions in the future, but for the moment, it's the way he's behaving until the Europeans are going to change their path as he sees.
What do you think could the European Union be now mulling as far as retaliation to the threats are concerned? Is the European Union at all equipped to counter Trump's tariff threats? Because it's largely clear and established that the US is a superpower, a mightier nation than whole of European Union combined.
It doesn't matter really what is my opinion, because I love, like everybody else, international law, to get through results, through diplomacy, and sitting about things. But you have seen lately, and of course Trump has did it maybe in a brutal way, but it doesn't mean he's not right. Like, what is the word sovereign or sovereignty? Because when you took a president from a narco state, you are taking a narco drug trafficker and not a real president. So you are not harming really the sovereignty of this country. Maybe you are giving Venezuela an opportunity to be real and sovereign in the future. So I don't say that Greenland is the same, because you are dealing with a whole continent that is democratic and liberal and everything. So you should sit with them and talk with them and to get to some deal. But the question is that everybody has been waking up very late. I personally was 10, 11 years ago, several times when I was serving my country in Russia, and I was there in some meetings and summits about the Arctic. And they were in full board already 11, 12, 13 years ago about how to exploit the Arctic. And for them, it means how to exploit it about militarily and minerals. And that's exactly what Trump is doing this. He's trying to defend the Western Hemisphere militarily and about minerals. So I think really the Europeans should be more proactive and demanding Trump to sit together and get a deal.
All right, Mati, thanks for your comments there. Requested to stay on as we proceed. Viewers, bringing you news now from Palestine. Israeli settlers attacked the Kirbet El Sidra Bedouin community near Mikmas, east of Ramallah, setting fire to 2 homes and 2 cars. A local resident said 60 to 70 settlers stormed the encampment at once. The Palestinian Red Crescent reported that 2 Palestinians and 2 international activists were injured. Let's hear some statements coming in.
اللي صار عندنا والله هجمة مش طبيعية، يعني تقدر تقول فوق ال60 70 واحد خشوا على التجمع مرة واحدة. يعني تفاجأنا ما شفنا اللي هم يعني منقسمين إلى قسمين، قسم جاي على الجهة اللي فوق اللي هم جيراننا فوق، وقسم جاي علينا هان. كانت إحنا طلعنا بقينا في البيت، طلعنا وصار تقريبا يعني مناوشات بيننا وبينهم إحنا وياهم، وناس انقسموا هم، يعني تقسموا في التجمع كلياته، كسروا وحرقوا في البيوت تحت وفي البيوت هاد شوفت عينك، وفي البيوت فوق جارنا هو ومرته فوق والله ضرب وبأشد الأنفس طلعوا، وهي وضع بتعرفوا كلياتكم بتعرفوا شو وضعه. الله يكون بعون، الله يرفع عنا إن شاء الله.
Semi-nomadic Bedouins are especially vulnerable, facing forced displacement and minimal protection due to restricted Palestinian policing. Attacks by settlers, including price tag attacks, remain widespread across the West Bank. Many incidents go unpunished, with UN figures showing 90% of complaints by Palestinians against settlers never leading to indictments. Mati, how do you view the situation on the ground?
Well, there is a big problem here because what they did, of course, is terrible. They don't have to do this, but let's see the whole picture. I must remind you that we are talking about an area that it was divided from the 93 Accords in Oslo in areas A, B, and C. And the areas A is completely in full government of the Palestinians. The area B is a mixed government. In the area C, it's Israeli security government, and with some autodetermination for all the cities and villages from the Palestinians in that area. The question is, you have Bedouins in all these areas. And I must say, inside Israel also there are Bedouins, and they have also a lot of problems within the years because they are moving from place to place and taking new lands. In the sea area of the Palestinian, together with the Palestinian Authority, they have been common security means by Israelis and Palestinians, but many times these Bedouins, they take more land and they don't care. So what is bad is that these extremist people took the law in their hands and they tried to make them frightening and go out of them. And what is clear that also in the Israeli government today, there are a lot of representatives of settlers. So sometimes if they do something really bad, they have an indictment, but usually they don't have. So all this conflict and all these problems, they should be settled with all parts. And clearly, after everything that happened in Gaza too, and everything in the way that the Palestinian Authority has been behaving all these years, we only can handle this from a security point of view, but nothing is going toward a real, I don't know, a solution for 2 states or whatever. So this is a very conflicting way, and until also the Israeli government is not going to change to a more moderate one, this is going to continue to be a conflictive thing, but you must know the facts from both sides and not only from one side.
All right, Matty, thanks then very much for your comments, for joining us here at NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're now going to proceed to cover news now from Indonesia. From the plane crash, now rescuers in eastern part of the country have recovered debris and the body of 1 victim from a plane that crashed on Sunday with 10 people on board. The turboprop aircraft lost contact with air traffic control on Saturday while en route from Yogyakarta to Makassar in Sulawesi. The crash site, located on Mount Bulasarong in Bantimurung, in Bulutsarong National Park was hard to reach due to steep terrain and fog. Among the debris, search teams found parts of the fuselage, tail and windows, while one male victim's body was located at a depth of 200 meters. The victim was found close to aircraft remains. 3 government officials were on board who were on a mission to monitor marine resources. Over 1,000 rescuers, including military and volunteers, are involved in the search. The mission is being challenged by the harsh weather and difficult terrain. Indonesia has had a history of aviation accidents, including several fatal crashes in recent years. Now moving on, viewers. Egypt and Sudan have welcomed the US offer to restart talks with Ethiopia over the long-running Nile River water dispute, after US President Donald Trump asserted that Washington is ready to resume mediation to settle the issue once and for all, after earlier negotiations collapsed in 2020. The move comes after Ethiopia inaugurated the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in September. The $5 billion project, Africa's largest hydroelectric dam, is designed to double Ethiopia's power generation. But Egypt warns the dam could sharply reduce the Nile's flow, threatening agriculture and water security. Sudan is seeking guarantees that filling the dam's reservoir will not disrupt its own dams. At the heart of the dispute is how the dam is filled and operated, water releases through droughts, and despite resolution. Egypt and Sudan want a binding deal, while Ethiopia favors non-binding guidelines. Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev now joins us in this discussion. He's former Indian High Commissioner to Nigeria and joins us from New Delhi. Ambassador, thanks very much for joining us. Firstly, how do you see the fact that Trump has indicated his will to remediate this conflict after having failed once in 2020, even going on to say that Egypt could blow up the dam? That's now really a point of pride for Ethiopia.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's an interesting going around by President Trump from his first term failure. It is in part owing to his gratitude to Egypt's President Sisi for making it possible to have a Gaza peace deal and forcing Hamas to make concessions. As you know, the ceasefire has held since October last year, and the second phase of its implementation is underway, which would further require Egyptian role. In a letter to Egyptian president, in response to Egyptian president's letter congratulating him on this deal with Israel and Hamas, President Trump has made this offer, and he has mentioned certain tenets that would find the basis in his future negotiations with Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. Basically, Ethiopia considers this dam to be it's a very vital economic resource for both electricity and water in much of the country. It is Africa's largest dam. It has cost nearly $5 billion, as you have mentioned, and it has capacity to generate 5 gigawatts of power, which would transform a power-starved country such as Ethiopia. At least that's what Addis Ababa hopes. Now, it doesn't want to subject this dam's operations and optimization of its resources to lower riparian countries' whims and demands. which include Sudan and Egypt both. Both these countries consider the water flowing from the dam. The dam is on Blue Nile River. It is vital to both Sudan and Egypt. And these are three of the most populous and area-wise biggest countries in Africa. So in the first phase, Egyptians and Sudanese demanded a say in running of the dam. And the dam was at that time being filled up with water. And now the dam has been filled up. And all this while, from 2020 to 26, Ethiopians have managed to do what they wanted to do, have the total control on the dam's operations. They have been mindful of not subjecting Sudan and Egypt to some kind of water crisis during drought months, etc. But the problem has stayed on, and these two lower riparian countries want to have a treaty which will force Ethiopia to coordinate the management of the dam, utilization of its water to their consultations with Addis Ababa. Let's see how Mr. Trump this time sort of succeeds. Last time it was initially at Mr. Trump's level, but when it became clear that Ethiopia has very little interest in ceding even limited control to any board comprising of the three countries, then Mr. Trump detached himself and put it at the lower level of State Department. Let's see if this time, emboldened by his recent successes in Gaza and Venezuela, Mr. Trump would once again decide to mediate from a position of strength. But I think the basic issues remain unchanged. The dam has been filled, so the steady state is now in place, and the water is being discharged on the rate that Ethiopians choose. So far, Sudan has been in a civil war. It has more things to mind. And Egypt has not faced the kind of water shortage that it was afraid of. But the issue would not go away. And with Mr. Trump having an IOU to Cairo, the pressure on Ethiopia may mount once again. Let us see whether Ethiopians can sort of go around this pressure building up against them. They have various assets. They have the African Union support, which is based in Addis Ababa. And they might have other countries supporting them, including Turkey, perhaps. One should also add that Ethiopia joining BRICS has also come to adverse notice of Mr. Trump, who doesn't like BRICS. And therefore, Ethiopia might have lost the chance to have a neutral mediator in Mr. Trump. Thank you.
All right, Ambassador, thanks very much, in fact, for explaining that. Viewers, moving ahead, UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has visited Sudan's Al Afad IDP camp in northern state, meeting people displaced by ongoing violence in Darfur and Kordofan over the past year. He described hearing horrific stories of trauma, particularly survivors of sexual violence. The UN reports that rape, gang rape, abduction and sexual slavery have been used as a weapon of war, often targeting individuals based on ethnicity or perceived ties to opposing groups. The UNHCR continues to document these abuses, highlighting the urgent need for protection, accountability and humanitarian support for those affected by the brutal conflict in Sudan. I request Ambassador Sajdev to join us back in the discussion here.
Yes, it's world's largest humanitarian crisis, even surmounting what is going on in Yemen and in Gaza. Sudan is a sparsely populated, large country with a population of nearly 50 million people, out of which over 20% have been rendered homeless, more than 12 million people, and many of them have been forced to neighboring countries such as Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and other countries in the south, Sudan, etc. And this is clearly a very serious situation. The United Nations have been trying to do what it can, but peacemaking under UN aegis, under the Quad initiative taken by United States, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE have not succeeded. And the two belligerents comprising of Sudan Armed Forces and Rapid Support Forces, both part of the erstwhile United Sudan military structure, are at each other. And the battle lines have basically coagulated around Darfur and Kordofan in RSF's control, while remaining parts of Sudan with the SAF, largely with some pockets of various tribal groups being in charge. Now there are foreign backers of the two sides. Egypt backs SAF, while UAE, Libya, and South Sudan seem to be backing RSF. RSF also has some support from renegade Russian Wagner group, and it has been accused of horrific human rights abuses in Darfur against non-Arab African stock population. The Al-Fashir capture late last year has resulted in allegedly up to 200,000 people being displaced, many of them killed altogether. UNHCR's visit is delayed, but has now finally taken place. It's more of a symbolic visit because UN, despite its call for replenishment of its financial and other resources, has not received much support from other donors who are already busy with other crises bubbling away, such as in Gaza, in Yemen, in Ukraine, and elsewhere. So with the United States declining all aid to United Nations of humanitarian kind, this has become a very serious situation for UN with having few resources to cater to something like 12 million refugees within and outside Sudan, created by this 1,000 days of war, unremitting and very brutal genocidal conflict. It is to be hoped that future, as we complete nearly 3 years in April of this conflict, would perhaps have these the two sides reconciled to a split territorially with East and Center staying with SAF, while West and South going to RSF. The partition of the country is a fact of life, and efforts to change it militarily have so far not succeeded, except creating new wave of refugees and blood and gore. So let's hope that the two sides give up this war of attrition and focus on nation building in their own respective parts. Thank you.
Sure, Ambassador, thanks very much once again for explaining the situation to our international viewers. And with that, viewers, let's also tell you that Pope Leo XIV has expressed his concerns for the people displaced by violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, warning of a serious humanitarian crisis. He's also offered prayers for the victims of the deadly floods in South Africa. Let's listen in to what Pope Leo XVI had to say.
Le grandi difficoltà che soffre la popolazione dell'est della Repubblica Democratica del Congo, costretta a fuggire dal proprio paese, specialmente verso il Burundi, a causa della violenza e affrontare una grave crisi umanitaria. Preghiamo affinché tra le parti desidero inoltre assicurare la mia preghiera per le vittime delle inondazioni che nei giorni scorsi hanno colpito l'Africa meridionale.
And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.